I will call the Senate Standing Committee on Crime Victims, Crime and Corrections together, or to order. Senator Pat Gallivan, we are joined by the ranking member, the minority member, Senator Essa Thompson. We also had Senator Akshar, Senator Savino, and Senator Little. And we had voting sheets to constitute a quorum. There's 12 bills on the agenda. And I just know the very first bill and the last 3 bills I know. All the others have not only passed the committee, they've passed the Senate. But before we get to the agenda, I just want to pass out. And I would ask Senator Hassel Thompson and Senator Savino, will you share with your conference members? And I will share with our conference. It has to do with our ongoing discussions about risk levels for sex offenders. And so all those fancy words essentially just ask all members submitting legislation to be conscious of that, because it's an issue that often comes up before us. So my intent is to do it in conference, and I would ask that the two of you do the same, as opposed, I don't want it to appear that we're telling everybody else what to do. So I'll stand up and ask people just to consider this, and then of course if there are questions from they can refer the members of the committee or to me.
Now, I appreciate that, because I think that a lot of the bills, because of the generality and the nature of them, I tend to vote no when I have discomfort about voting no on any of the sex offender bills. But I think there ought to be a kind of specificity that does not exist in a lot of the things we do, so I appreciate it.
And I know that has come up time and time again. So we will move to the first item on the agenda. This is a new bill sponsored by Senator Rivera, Senate Bill 992. It will be referred to Finance. It is an act to amend the executive law in relation to translation services for inmates appearing before the parole board.
So,
any negative votes? The bill is referred to Finance.
I'm without rec, not because I don't think that it should be done, but and Spanish certainly is the easiest language to come up with an interpreter for. But there can be other instances where they're just not available in parts of the state.
No, understood. This is currently the parole board practice, and it's part of the rules, the regulations that are filed with NYC, where's NYCRR. So this is their practice, and the Senator's legislation is looking to codify.
So it's just codifying, it's done. It isn't actually putting a timeline on how quickly you have to have the interpreter.
No, the timelines that are in existence are in existence. If somebody needs an interpreter, then if they need an interpreter, then it must, under the regulations, it must be provided. It's codified. Just speaking from my experience in 5 years on the parole board, it was a practice. From time to time, we would get a very rare language. Sometimes it was hard to find an interpreter, and dates had to be adjusted. But generally, the largest ones, as I recall anecdotally, were Spanish and Polynesian languages. And they were probably, it essentially took place in the regular order of business.
Well, and the parole board doesn't always go to these facilities anymore, right? To do the interviews.
They do not. They do not. Some are teleconference, but I don't know the percentage. When I was on the board, we teleconferenced some of them, but it was significantly less than half. I think it's flipped now, more than half are teleconference.
And the interpreter is on the teleconference, or has to be at the facility?
All the ones that I was involved in, I don't know what's required, but the ones that I was involved in when it was teleconference, the interpreter was at the facility. The interpreter was present at the meeting. And this, the legislation, I believe, is silent as to where the interpretation goes.
All right, well, those were...
It just states it has to be provided for you.
I just recalling when I did casework, interpretation services were always a problem in courts. They might have interpreters, but usually when you were doing interviews, you didn't have someone available. It was a language bank that was contracted to provide interpretation services. We actually called in, and they did it by telephone. So that's one of the possibilities.
Well, no, again, I don't know right now, but during my time on the board, there were contracts in place and services in place. And some administrative within parole made the arrangements.
Right, well,
Spanish is the easiest, the most likely to have an interpreter on site, but you will run across some languages where you may not.
Did from time to time.
Employ a full-time interpreter, and that's where contracts like the language bank are still in existence.
I wasn't against it, I was just, I had some questions.
Figure it out.
Subdivision prior to this, which requires providing assistance to deaf people. This subdivision is new, the previous subdivision which requires assistance for people who are deaf.
Thanks. All right, that bill is reported. Next on the agenda, Senate Bill 1483, sponsored by Senator Lavelle. This also will be referred to Finance. It is also passed this committee in the Senate before. It is an act to amend the executive law in relation to the time in which reconsideration for parole shall be determined.
Move the bill.
Second.
Discussion? The bill is reported. Negative votes. Senator Hassel Thompson is negative. Next on the agenda, Senate Bill 1608, sponsored by Senator Bonasek, passed the Senate last year. It is an act to amend the correctional law in relation to the sex offender registry.
Second.
Negative votes. The bill is referred to Finance. Senate Bill 1963, sponsored by Senator Robach, passed the Senate last year. It is an act to amend the correctional law in relation to the eligibility for limited credit time allowances for inmates serving indeterminate or determinate sentences imposed for specific offenses.
Move the bill.
Motion to report. Negative votes. Senator Hassel Thompson. Negative. The bill is reported. Next on the agenda, Senate Bill 2064, sponsored by Senator Young. This also passed the Senate last year. It is an act to amend the executive law in relation to temporary detention of person whose presumptive release, parole, or additional release, post-release supervision alleged to have violated the terms of their release. Motion to report. Negative votes. Senator Hassel Thompson. We'll give Senator Rivera time to catch his breath, anticipating his vote.
Where will you start?
2064.
It's a negative.
Negative? Yes. We will note your presence and a negative vote. The bill is referred to Finance. The next bill on the agenda, sponsored by Senator Ritchie, Senate Bill 2394. This also passed the Senate last year. It is an act to amend the correction law in relation to agreements for custody of... Let me read it again. An act to amend the correction law in relation to agreements for custody of definite sentence inmates.
So,
Yeah, second. It's a very good bill.
Any negative votes? Senator Rivera,
Yeah.
negative. The bill is
Only a few places.
reported to Finance.
Right.
Next on the agenda, Senate Bill 2950, sponsored by Senator Murphy. This passed the Senate last year as well. It is an act to amend the correction law in relation to restricting sex offenders from residing near the residence of their victim.
so,
Second, I actually wonder, that's not already in the current statute. So we restrict everywhere else they can live. They can't live within 1,000 feet of a daycare center, a church, a school, you name it, but there's no restriction saying that they can't live near their victim?
You would have thought that would have done the first one.
This
I always miss that.
This is actually inspired by a case that happened down in the district. Apparently, a man sexually abused a young girl who lived next door. He served his sentence, and when he got out, he went back to live next door. And that's what prompted the bill, but it was not current law.
There is an order of protection,
Yes.
but they do expire. They're not, they're not forever.
Some extent, perhaps that's why we didn't do it.
And often it's because a condition of parole or probation. But once that parole or probation recommendation ends. All right, that bill is reported. Next on the agenda is Senate Bill 3223, sponsored by Senator Carlucci. It's an act to amend the correction law, the executive law, and the penal law in relation to sex offenders' notice of residency requirements.
So,
Any negative votes? That bill is reported to finance. Next on the agenda is Senate Bill 4511, sponsored by Senator Lanza, also passed the Senate last year. It is an act to amend the correction law in relation to in-person appearance requirements for level 2 sex offenders. Motion recorded. Senator Salino. Negative votes? Need a second by Senator Rivera. Senator Hesse Thompson.
negative.
In the negative. That bill is reported. Okay, next on the agenda is a new bill sponsored by Senator Ritchie. It is Senate Bill 6222, an act to amend the correction law in relation to civilian drone use near a correctional facility.
So,
Motion recorded by Senator Hesse Thompson, second Senator Savino. Negative votes.
No, just a question.
Comments? Question, Senator Little.
It says opposed by the Motion Picture Association. If they wanted to film a correction facility, would they need permission anyway?
I don't know the answer to that.
it would have to,
I would think the answer is yes.
I would assume
But I
they
don't
would
know
like
for
that.
sure.
which is why their opposition isn't done.
That bill is reported. Senate Bill 7191, sponsored by Senator Gallivan. This will be referred to finance. This is a departmental sent over by the Office of Victim Services. An act to amend the executive law in relation to the eligibility for reimbursement of burial expenses. Senator Hesse Thompson.
I didn't check this one because I wasn't clear that I understood it. Can you explain it?
Very briefly, then I would ask counsel to go further if necessary. If a funeral home pays for the cost of the burial as a result of a crime that has been committed, and they don't get reimbursed for the means, then they have the ability to make the application.
Okay,
to the
I
Office
did
of
not
Crime
understand
Victims.
this bill to say that.
And then there is a limitation, there is a $6,000 limitation on it.
No, that makes perfect
So
sense
the
to
funeral
me.
home is not
But
left.
the bill, the way I read
The
it,
justification
does not read that way.
It talks about how they can't find the owner of the funeral home. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. That was the only reason I had a question. Okay. I'm
I didn't
satisfied.
understand.
We actually came over as departmental and we didn't adjust anything yet. I know that we didn't scrutinize that.
Can we clean that up just a little? Just the
There's no reason.
justification, I don't think the bill itself.
We will have.
No,
No, on the, no, not the language.
Not the
sponsors.
language of the bill. The sponsor's memo is poorly written. Sorry about that, but it's poorly written.
If you read, it says,
All right, we will actually check with them to see if that we can clean up the sponsors.
it says here, under current law, only a person who has paid for or incurred the burial expenses for a crime victim is eligible to file a claim for the reimbursement of such expenses. Okay,
The individual.
Right. Funeral homes themselves can and sometimes do voluntarily take on these expenses. When a funeral home does so and they seek reimbursement, OVS, the Office of Victim Services, must get the owner of the business to file as he or she is the person who has paid for or incurred the expense. Okay. And so it just doesn't make sense. But then it goes on in the statement of support to explain how sometimes they can't find the owner of the funeral home so that they can be the claimant when such business wants to cover the expenses of
It should sound.
yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. That's why I just asked you to explain it. I thought I understood it, but I need to be clear that I did.
I just need to
So
read
that
the
was-
memo.
I read the law.
But some
The
funeral
language in the
homes,
law is
And the law, that's what I said,
explained.
the law was very clear, I wasn't sure what.
but are some funeral homes owned by like a conglomerate or a big company?
Sure.
Trying
They're still
to
the owner.
donate that person, so it just seems the funeral home could send it to them.
That's what this does. It lets the funeral home. Like that particular, if all these chairs are funeral homes, it's this funeral home.
Yeah, not the president of a company of about 30 funeral homes or something.
We can actually check, we can check with them.
Poorly drafted.
And we're okay with that. As far as the sponsor.
I read this stuff.
All right, that bill is reported.
Okay.
And finally, last on the agenda is also a new bill sponsored by Senator Orton, Senate Bill 7252. It will be referred to Finance. It's an act to amend the correctional law in relation to directing the Division of Criminal Justice Services to notify the appropriate agencies within 48 hours of the receipt of a change of address or of enrollment, attendance, employment, or residence at an institution of higher education by a sex offender.
I don't think sex offenders are well allowed within the Belgian Freedom of Learning Institute.
Yeah.
I mean, I just thought that was.
Is there a motion to report? Any negative votes? The bill is reported to Finance, as with the last one. Motion to adjourn?
So
So moved. Thank you, everybody.